All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Comic Book Squares. This is going to be a good one. We're going to interview another creator this time. My name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's start this show.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what the book is.
Okay, yeah, I'm David Schrader. My current book is called Cannibals on Mars, and it's kind of a space sci-fi horror action adventure set in the near future. And I'm the co-creator and writer of Baby Badass, which was a book that came out a few years ago. And me and my partner in Bloodline Comics, Clay Adams, we do an anthology called Nightmare Theater, and we just did the second volume this last Halloween, and we'll be doing Nightmare Theater 3D in 2023 coming out.
Oh man!
Yeah, 2 years
Great.
now. We're trying to give it a little bit of a break because it's a big undertaking. But yeah. So, and I'm a writer and filmmaker. I have a film out called Mary Tyler Millennial right now. It's kind of a horror comedy that's making the festival rounds. It's going to be playing at the Marina Del Rey Film Festival here in June. So that'll be the first West Coast screening that we can get people to go to. I'm very excited about that.
That's awesome.
Very
That's
cool. Yeah.
Horror comedy's right up my alley. I love that stuff, man.
Yeah, me too. I think the first horror comedy I saw where I was like, this is really funny was House with William Cash back in the day.
Oh,
yeah. I was a 13 or 14, whatever, and I remember like it was on HBO, and it was just really funny. It's like, wow, I'm laughing and I'm scared at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is like right up my alley.
I was just excited to see the greatest American hero in a horror movie.
Yeah. Right.
Right, exactly.
He was great in that.
It's like, Ralph, you totally took a wrong turn, you know?
Yeah, there's not a lot in that. That's kind of a very tiny niche genre. I mean, I'd say Dale and Tucker versus Evil probably fits within there as well, which is another favorite of mine.
Yeah,
great. That's funny. I did see that not that long ago, and I thought that was great. Yeah, it's got a somewhat limited audience, because I think you have to find people that have like if it's a good horror comedy, they have to have a good sense of humor and like horror, and sometimes those two don't always overlap. But there's a sweet spot that's the type of person you want to know.
Yeah,
that likes
absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
You're talking to four of them, right?
Yeah,
Good. I'm in the right place.
Yes, you are.
So, can I ask where are you guys situated? Are you all different places, or different areas of the country? Where at?
We're a combination of Arizona and Illinois.
Oh, cool. That's like Illinois.
Illinois.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
Beautiful. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Oh my God. That's it. I'm out.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
And that's the show.
Don't forget to tip your waiters.
Thank you.
So yeah, actually, I have to always be honest when I'm on these things because I'm like, I have imposter syndrome up and down all the time, but also as far as comics goes, like I was a little bit of a latecomer to comics. When I was a kid, I liked comics, and I was into like Peanuts and Charlie Brown books and all that stuff. And then somewhere along the line, I think I kind of just didn't read them anymore until I started Baby Badass, and I had to do play catch up. And so I never try to pretend I'm some, guy with nerd credentials. I don't. I'm very respectful of the space. We tried to do something different with Baby Badass. It was a little bit of a nod to like those 90s comics with the pouches and the, the over the top stuff. And like, I just went as far as I could go with it, with like the foul language and the violence and that grindhouse feel. But so I kind of had it both ways, you can kind of pull people in with some of that, sex and violence, and do something different with the comedy. And that's what I always enjoy doing.
Yeah. So it was the like some of those ones like Peanuts and other stuff that kind of got you into the creation of comics.
Yeah, but also my brother had X-Men comics and like, the Incredible Hulk and all the Marvel and DC stuff. So, but then I gravitated more to like, I don't know why it was, but I loved reading like the Peanuts books, and I did my own comic strip. I had a cat named Herman. It was like this grouchy cat, and it was before Garfield. It's like I think Garfield like totally ripped him off and did it worse. So I actually drew comics. I liked comics, so I don't know why there was that gap when I moved to LA. I was 19, and I was doing like stand-up comedy and writing, and so it just wasn't. like I didn't go to Golden Apple. I didn't know anything about it. Like comics just were off my radar. And I have friends since then that like they are, Kristen Horn, who I co-created Baby Badass with, has a great like encyclopedic knowledge of comics, and Clay Adams also like, comes at it from a very literary standpoint. And I defer to those guys all the time, and I'll ask them like, has this been done before, or can we turn this convention on its head? And it's fun though. I mean, for me, because whether I was doing stand-up or improv or making short films or whatever, comics is this. I don't know. You can use your imagination, and if the artist can bring it to life, it still costs that much per page. You know what I mean? And and that's, to me, is the most fun thing about making comics, is getting the pages. When you finally get those pages in from the script, there's really nothing like it. It's like mini Christmas mornings,
Yeah.
Well put. So so David, let's let's kind of your great adventure right now as far as the Cannibals on Mars and the Kickstarter campaign, and for those that maybe haven't been to the page yet to kind of watch your video and kind of hear a little bit about it, like what led up to basically this release specifically?
Sure. I've talked about it before, that I didn't want anyone to think that this was like a crazy title, like a comic that was chasing a title. Like I did come up with the title. It's loosely affiliated with the Baby Badass universe. It's not officially, for many reasons, but in that universe, the future is so effed up. Can we swear on here?
Oh yeah. YouTube
okay.
and
the future is such duty that
we have to stop you at duty.
Right, stop you. I'm gonna cut that out. such fucking duty that like they had a colony on Mars, and the idea was that like things got so bad that they just forgot about them, just like well, you guys are on your own. And I could see that happening, in this post-apocalyptic world.
Sure.
And so that was the idea. There was even a throwaway line in a Baby Badass book that's not even written yet, where they're like, someone says, and there's cannibals on Mars, and it was just a throwaway line. It's like, oh, that sounds like an old like, B movie type thing, and like, how do you mash these things up? And I like the idea. And so I was talking to my friend Tony Donnelly. He was the artist on a book called Albert Einstein Time Mason, and we were tabling at LA Comic Con, and David Pepos was there, and Stephen Prince, and a bunch of other guys, and me and Tony were talking. I told him this idea. He said, "Oh, I would love to do something like that, a little darker, like because Albert Einstein was a little more in the PG-13 wheelhouse." So I said, yeah. So he did some sketches, and we talked about it. That was 2019. So that was 2019, yeah. And then I kind of wrote it that year, a little off and on, and started giving him pages. And he was doing it. It grew from like a 24-page book to like this 42-page book. And I didn't let anything constrain us, because it's kind of a one-shot. It does have the option to lead into a second part, but it's not an ongoing series by any means. So he did a really cool job. He has like a very retro kind of art style. And then Andre Salazar, who did a book called Pariah, Missouri, which was a really cool graphic novel that had really amazing watercolors that he did by hand. It wasn't done on a program.
Oh, nice.
So we're like, what if we combine these things, and it just gave the book a different look. It doesn't look like a typical comic book, and it's got a little bit of a European flavor to it, but those are all hand-painted watercolors. He would take the pages, get them printed, paint them, then those would be scanned back in. Man. And I don't know, I just like the look of it, and dealing with some of the literal sex and violence that goes on up there, and the having a blood-soaked surface of Mars. Like, what kind of pulp book would this make? And so that's the genesis of the idea. Was it came from this other story, just as an offhanded comment. And I don't know, I just like the idea of something like this happening. And sure enough, there was an article not that long ago, before we even launched the Kickstarter, but well after I had done the book. and you know, I have a Google alert for Cannibals on Mars because I'm like, when am I ever going to see this? And I was like, when it came up, and it was an article saying, you know, Elon Musk could end up on Mars, but if, you know, things go wrong with the terraforming, they could end up as cannibals. And so the whole thing was like Cannibals on Mars. I was like, wow, you know, like you think you come up with a title that's so ridiculous that it could never be in the vernacular, and then these guys beat me to it. So yeah, and there's been more of that recently about Mars and like you know, the colonies on Mars and what could happen. So I just wanted to take it in a horror direction. I'm a big fan of like, you know, Carpenter's The Thing, and
it's funny you mentioned that. What I was telling these guys before you jumped on, David, was when I was looking at the pages, what jumped out to me almost right away before I had really gotten into any of the, you know, the script or anything, just the look of it. I was talking Ghosts of Mars, the one that Carpenter made a few years ago. And I was like, it kind of had that feel with a little bit of Alien and a little bit of, you know, all that sort of lost colony on a distant planet kind of thing. I loved it. And you brought up David Papos too. And I don't know how I stumbled on it, but I saw, it was about 5 years ago when he started that Spencer and Locke.
Yeah,
and I absolutely, I got both volumes. He had a volume 1 and 2, 4 issues each. And for the rest of the guys on the show, I think Shane, I might have mentioned it to you, but this was basically like, what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up and basically Calvin became a homicide cop with like a psychotic episode and saw and still continued to see his stuffed animal, but now his stuffed animal was like another detective. And it was like, I mean, it was crazy.
That's a fantastic book. Yeah, David's awesome. You know, he's doing Savage Avengers now, and like he's working so he works very hard.
Yes, he does.
He hustles very hard. He's got great ideas. He knows how to pitch them. And if you've ever been next to David at a con, which I have many times, like you get used to hearing that same pitch because he is selling people. And you know, do you like Calvin and Hobbes? It's like, what if Calvin and Hobbes in Sin City? And this guy is relentless.
I would love to see another volume of that. I love what he did with it. I thought it was fantastic, and I was glad I got my hands on it.
Right.
And I won't say that's kind of what started me toward the indie stuff, but you know, I was always into it more than that. But he was, when I saw that, I'm a big. You talked about the Peanuts. I've got every volume trade of Calvin and Hobbes. That's been my favorite.
Oh, nice,
yeah. I mean, I could read that stuff over and over and over again. I don't care if I know what's coming. I still.
Well, you must have really, really appreciated Spencer and Locke.
I did.
Because I mean, there's a nostalgia factor there that's hard to, and then it's dark too. But like, it takes it in a whole new way.
Well, when they would when David would do the flashbacks of Locke as a kid, it looked like Calvin.
Yeah, no, these guys haven't seen that yet. It's a great book.
I don't know. You know, we all.
Oh, you didn't recommend it to us. You didn't put it on the list.
But I'm gonna send all you guys Baby Badass too.
Nice.
If you want to check it out. I'll send you the PDFs.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're with the same publisher, or we're with Spencer and Locke and Baby Badass. So we may be waiting a little while, and we'll see what happens with that. But it's not really anything that we can talk about. So you know, I'm moving on with other projects until that gets resolved.
Well, one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, you know, since we're talking to indie publishers, is the process that you have to go through as somebody who's struggling to get noticed, you know, in this industry. How are you getting out there and getting your book out there to people besides the Kickstarter campaign? How are you getting people to be aware of what you're doing, and you know, what's that process look like?
I think a lot of it, unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, but I say unfortunately because social media drives a lot of it, and sometimes it's people that you know and friends, and if they're retweeting or reposting things, and it's almost like a community. Kickstarter has become a little bit of that. Like, I'm good friends also with like Charlie Stickney, who has an amazing book called White Ash. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's something certainly to check out. It's one of the top Kickstarter books that's ever been out there. And you know, you build a community if you kind of help each other out. You find other creators that you respect and like their work, and you know, you just kind of run in that same circle, and that includes going to cons, regional cons, or the bigger ones. And you know, it's a lot of like David did, you know, it's a lot of knocking on doors. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work, and when you're busy, if you have a new family or whatever, it can be hard. But if it's your passion and something you want to do, So just like in real life, whether it's at the cons, you kind of have to do that on social media as well. And not in a pushy way, but just kind of like put yourself out there and get involved in the conversations. And, if the book is good, it will find an audience, but sometimes it just takes a little time to grow. In my particular case with Baby Badass, I kind of came in cold. I sent some letters out. A guy got back to me from this publisher, and he really liked it. It spoke to him. Now, luckily, I could do whatever I wanted with it. It wasn't like there were restraints on me. So if you ever read Baby Badass, there are very little restraints in that book. And it's not always what people think it is too. Like we had Dan Mendoza did a cover, and it was very kind of literally in your face. And but we try to do some different things with the book and the conventions of like those 90s comics. But I kind of got lucky timing wise, because they were looking for something that kind of fit that and put it out, and it gets into shops. It's not necessarily, no one gets into comics to make a lot of money, really. But if you want to get your work out there and then build to the next thing, that's you do what you can. I would certainly say Kickstarter is better than going to a crappy publisher these days, because if you support other creators on Kickstarter and you have a lot of community like with you, when it's time for your book to come out, they'll show up too and spread the word. Yeah.
Well, and David, that's what we're hoping to do with this show. When we started this, was however we can help bring attention to your creation, to your work. We want to try to do that. And you mentioned Charlie Stickney, and I've got some of those White Ash books. I mean, and for the other guys, this is kind of like sort of like an elvish type. And I'm not big into elves, but this is actually really.
I'm not into I'm not into that fantasy stuff normally either, really, good, but
right?
It's really good. I was going to see if I had a book here.
Well, and his he did they did a one-off, and I can't remember how many issues of it they've done, but there's a character from the White Ash series called Glarian. She's kind of like the beauty elf, and she's pretty deadly. She pulls out a couple of blades, and she can do her best Elektra imitation on anybody. But it's really good. It's hard to get a hold of. I was able to get a hold of a copy of it, but yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I mean, he caught on with Scout Comics, and that's one of those companies that a lot of folks just aren't hearing about. They're starting to make headway. They've ended up in my comic shop, but I make sure that I've ordered several different Scout titles just to branch out, because like these other guys,
Charlie works.
He's worked hard, and he's done a great job. His stuff is in the local comic shop. So
he works editorially now for Scout. Like he is part of their staff, and my partner with Bloodline Comics, Clay Adams, he had a book called Red Xmas through Scout too, and it was like if Santa Claus went nuts and like on a rampage, and like so that's through Scout. They've got some good books, but I would say like if you just kind of stay in the game a little bit, like don't get discouraged, because it can be discouraging, but it can be a lot of fun too. Like you got to love comics, and you got to love just that whole atmosphere to withstand like the rejection, and also the cons and the con cred, as it were.
It's funny because so some of the other interviews we've done, we've heard the same thing, that sometimes the smaller, more local conventions that are put together by within some counties and things like that are better than these large, huge $75 a ticket 3-day things that are just monstrous. Like you could sit there and you just get passed by 5,000 people, but everybody wants to see everything, and so for you to get noticed, it's that much harder. So there is another way of getting noticed. It sounds like you guys have done some of that.
There is. One of the best shows I was at with Clay was Tulsa. It was kind of a small to medium-sized show, but there was people would stop and talk and buy, and like you said, it's not herds going past you. It was, and we sold some of our best days were there.
That's great. Cool. Yeah, they have a comic shop out there named Impulse Comics. And I don't know if they have anything to do with that con, but I've actually gotten some really hard to find stuff because it's the middle of Oklahoma, I guess. They have a great website, and I can't believe some of the stuff I found on there. That stuff that I can't find. I'm near Chicago, and so everything sells out so quick around here because it's so metropolitan, and there's a lot of collectors and a lot of speculators, unfortunately.
That'll do it.
Paul, you're in Arizona?
No,
Arizona. Arizona.
Arizona?
Yes.
All right.
Hey, Dave, I was wondering about with your books. You've talked about like going to cons, and some of the you've talked a little bit about the people you've worked with. Can you share a little bit more about some of the folks that you're working with, and like how you met and got to be working together?
Absolutely. So I'll just go in order.
Yeah.
Kind of Christian Horn, who I co-created Baby Badass with. We kind of came up with the idea. I believe that there was magic cookies involved. We had Big Bear and like just the conversation. I think, but like, what if this baby was kicking everybody's ass? And so that turned into this like post-apocalyptic thing where he's like a super soldier clone that didn't fully develop, and then he breaks out of the lab, and so it's crazy. It's a crazy book. But so Christian has a podcast called Part-Time Fanboy, and he's like a bona fide comic nerd, and so that's the journey I started with Baby Badass. And so I started talking to my friend Clay, who was in a movie that I did back in 2005 called Bloodline, and Clay was the lead, and it got released by Lionsgate. It's a horror film, kind of like Friday the 13th meets Memento.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I asked Clay because I knew he had a book called PBOW. It's called Pregnant Bitches of War. It's an amazing book. And he started a company called Fried Comics. Nice. And it's a great book. It's very much like a Tarantino grindhouse thing. Nice. It's like these women were meeting at a pregnancy meeting at the base of the Empire State Building, and somehow like Nikola Tesla changes the time warp or something and like sucks them in, and they go back in time and kill young Hitler, and then they think everything's gonna be better, and then it's worse for some reason, and like it's a crazy book.
Oh my God.
And so I asked him about it. I was like, hey, like, what do you do? Like I wanted to get Baby Badass with Fried Comics, which was his little company. And so we ended up not doing that, but I went with another company. But so we stayed in touch, and I hadn't talked to him for maybe a couple of years. He had been in the movie, but then he lived in New York and then Georgia. And so we started talking, and as we did, we eventually came up with an idea. We're like, what if we do an anthology? And so we came up with the Nightmare Theater anthology, and the framework was that it was a film festival of souls, of damned souls. And there's Shelley Post Stoker, who's our like Frankenstein-esque Elvira character, and there's the welder, who is like our Jason, or Freddy character, and then there's a little girl with the little dress and the stuffy, and she's like the girl from can't remember the movie now, but she comes out of the well.
The ring.
Yeah.
The ring, right? So it's all these tropes, right? So the tropes present the stories like it's a film festival, and so there's shorts and then there's features, and so the first book we did was like 272 pages, a giant book that I actually happen to have right here, and so this is Nightmare Theater.
Awesome.
Nice.
And it was a really cool book. So great story. So Charlie Stickney's in here, David Pepos, David Avalone.
Wow.
I want to say 35 creative teams and 272 pages.
Jeez.
So it turned out to be a really great campaign. The book turned out great. We ended up doing a second one just this last Halloween, but doing it every Halloween is almost too much.
Yeah.
It's too much work. So we're going to do it every other year, and we're going to do a book called Carmilla Unbound in between every other year. And Carmilla is the original vampire. I don't know if you know the story. It was 26 years before Dracula. This book was written. Oh. And she's a lesbian vampire. Imagine this book being written in whatever year that was, 18.
This just gets better and better.
So that character we're going to develop. We're basically we see her through her life, and in different years. And the first book is 1973, and so we have a short that we put in Nightmare Theater 2 that's called Carmilla Comes Again. And this is basically going to be our vampira kind of Elvira character. No, I'm sorry, that's Shelley Post Stoker. This is someone different. This is the character that's in the story.
Okay.
Sorry, Carmilla.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I get confused sometimes.
That's all right.
Like, there's so much going on, I can't even keep it straight.
It's all good.
You know what? That is the creative mind, right? You got so much bouncing around ideas and everything you guys have done. That's fantastic.
It's the curse.
It is, right? The creative mind is always on the move. So no, that's great stuff. So how can folks get a hold of some of this stuff, David? There's your Nightmare Theater and things like that. I know you said you guys did one a couple of years ago, and you're looking to keep doing that. I mean, are those all going to be on Kickstarter?
Well, those first 2 Nightmare Theaters were on Kickstarter, and we actually, after it's over, ended up putting the basic volume on Indiegogo. Okay. So if someone wants to look up Nightmare Theater, you can still order that. There's limited editions still available, and the idea is eventually we're going to partner with another publisher that we're talking to a few different places now where we may do like a best of, and they do like a 4-issue series of like the best of anthology, because there's so many stories and there's so much to draw from, especially now that we have 2 volumes. But those can be gotten on Indiegogo, and then Cannibals on Mars is running live now. There's less than 2 weeks to go. If you type in that name, it is the only one that comes up.
Yeah, and when this this episode comes out, everybody, it'll be about a week. So make sure you jump over to that Kickstarter. We'll have the links and stuff up for you in the show notes and in the description. So make sure you jump over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. It's almost over, and we need your help.
Across the finish line.
Yep.
Well, hopefully this will help out and get you where you need to be. So. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I just speaking on behalf of everybody, I'm just really happy to have you on here. This was a great chat, and it was good chance to know you and hear about all your work. It's been amazing.
Oh, well, it's great, guys. It seems like a really cool show. I'm glad you guys are doing it, and kind of out there promoting the little guys.
Absolutely.
Right.
You took the words out of our mouth. That's exactly what we said.
How are we going to end the show?
Right. We're just going to use David's catchphrase.
How long?
Dave
Actually,
took care of it for us.
How long have you been doing the
5
show?
minutes. No.
I'm the first guest.
How long has this interview been? About that long?
Right. We just launched our 5th episode today, right, Ben?
Yeah. 5th full-length episode, and then we also do what's called Ben's Kicks, where it's like I kind of promote some Kickstarter comics for folks that I have currently running campaigns.
Awesome.
That guy.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate it, guys. This is it's been a lot of fun. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
All right. Well, we absolutely love bringing creators to you guys and introducing you to work that you might not be aware of. So please make sure to hit the like and subscribe and notification bells so you keep getting information about the new shows coming out. And we'll see you on the next one.